Okay, hi everybody. Hi friends. Welcome back. Today we're going to do another tutorial. This time we're going to use some needles and not hooks because today we're going to learn purling. So purling, if you've done knitting, this should come fairly easy. Or if you've watched the knitting tutorial and you've started working on knitting a little bit, shouldn't be too bad because it's really very similar. The one difference is though is we're going to use our needle to go into the front of the loop. With knitting, you go in the back. Purling, you go in the front. So let's try that. So we've got our yarn here and we're going to wrap around the front. And like I said, it's really a lot like knitting. You still push that loop off the needle. You still wrap your yarn, but your yarn is in front of your right hand needle instead of in the back, and you're going in the front of the loop. Oops. And I have got my camera at a little bit different angle, so I am not quite used to it. I'm not used to watching my hands on a screen rather than just my hands. Okay, so we're going to go in the front, wrap our yarn, pull it up through the back, and push the old stitch off the right hand needle. In, wrap, pull it back, and off the needle. In, wrap, pull it back, and off the needle. I'm going to try to flip my hands over so you can see what's going on the back side here. We're going to finish that one up. Okay, so that was one row of purling. Okay, so I went through and I did a few more rows of just straight purling. So this is one side and this is the other side. And you can see they pretty much look the same and they really don't look too much different from Stockinette. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They don't look too much different from garter stitch, which is what we learned in the Knitting 101 video. So now we're going to do a little magic trick. Instead of purling the next row, I'm going to knit. I'm going to knit this row and then purl the following row and then just take turns. Every other row is going to be a knit and every other row is going to be a purl. So we're going to do knitting first. And I'm going to just kind of cruise through this. I'm sure after watching that Knitting 101 video that you are an expert at knitting now. I'm sure you can impress all of your friends. They just look over and say, look at her go, look at him go, look at them go. Knitters. Maybe not, but that's what I choose to believe because I think it's fun and I think it's cool. Okay, so I knitted that row. Now I'm going to purl the next row. Remember, our yarn stays in the front. I can hear my dog again. He just always wants to be in here when I'm making a video. One of these days, I'll have to let him help. So everybody can meet Willie the dog. He actually got in a little trouble today because I caught him with a ball of yarn in his mouth running around the house. Maybe he wants to learn to knit too. Whoops, oh my goodness, look at that. Dropped that stitch off of the hook too quick. Okay, I rescued it. Okay, so I purled that row. So now I'm going to switch again and knit again. And after I do this a couple more times, you're going to see something interesting. Actually, you probably can already see it. The different pattern here. And this is what we call stockinette stitch. Garter stitch and stockinette stitch. So I'm just going to go through it quick. Maybe I'll even speed up the video so you don't have to waste your time. But I just love stockinette stitch. It looks so smooth and I don't know how to describe it. Uniform, maybe? I love all the neat rows. All those V's. A lot of people like stockinette stitch. In fact, I know there's some crochet stitches that actually try to mimic the stockinette stitch. Pretty soon you'll get to the point too where you'll be talking to somebody and you'll be noticing the stockinette stitches on their sweaters. I do that all the time. Sometimes I have a hard time paying attention to people because I'm focused on their clothes and the stitches that were used to make them. Okay, we're going to purl this row. We knitted the last one. Remember, it's every other row. Knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row. And that's how you make the stockinette stitch. And we have car traffic outside our window again. Everybody's on their way home from work. And we are almost to the end of this row. I'm having a hard time wrapping that one. You want to be careful not to get these stitches too close to the end because they'll slip off on you, and that's kind of a pain. Okay, that ought to do it. So let's take a look at that now. Isn't it pretty? Okay, the last thing we're going to learn today, this morning, whenever you happen to be watching this, for me at the moment, it's early evening, so I said tonight. But what we're going to learn next is how to bind off, because this isn't really going to do you any good if it's staying on a needle forever. If you make a beautiful scarf or blanket or shawl, whatever you make, you're going to want to be able to get it off the needle. And that can be kind of uncomfortable to wear a scarf with a needle attached to it. So that's called binding off. So I'm going to try to show you how to bind off. And because this next row that we're doing is a knit row, whenever you see on a stockinette, this front part, that's a knit row. So I'm going to do a knitting bind off. If we were still purling, then we would do a purl bind off. And really all that means is you're going into the needle the same way you would do if you were going to continue stitching. So if I were to continue a row, I would go in as a knit. And so I'm going to bind off as a knit. So I'm going to knit a stitch just like normal and pull it onto the other needle. I'm going to do the same thing this time. I'm going to knit a stitch just like normal. Now is where it gets abnormal. You're actually going to use this needle here, and you're going to skip over this stitch, and you're going to work your needle underneath that stitch, and you're going to make it leapfrog. It's going to leapfrog right over the front stitch. Okay, so we're going to do that again. Never going to have more than 2 stitches on your right needle. Going to knit it just like regular. You're going to work your needle in there. Oops. And it's going to play leapfrog. It's going to jump right over the other stitch. Do one more and then we'll show you what the top looks like so you can see how that seam line is going to look. Knit it just like normal. Work your needle under that stitch and let them play leapfrog. Okay, I'm going to purl that loose so we don't lose the stitch. And again, we have these little V's. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down a little bit there. Oops, you're on the wrong needle. There we go. Excuse me, this way. Thank you. All right, so we're going to knit another stitch. Going to give that stitch a friend to play leapfrog with. And there he goes. Leapfrog. And now he needs a friend. And he's going to do a leapfrog too. Okay, almost there. Just have 3 more to go. And now we've just got 1 over here and 1 over here. Gonna knit it just like normal. And they're gonna play leapfrog too. Everyone gets to play. Oops. It is really, really strange to watch your hands on the screen. So that just leaves me with this 1 stitch left on the needle. And what we're going to do, naturally I left my scissors in the other room, but what we're going to do is we're going to run this yarn right through that hole to tie it off. Nice and okay. No, oh goodness, I'm making such a mess. Okay, now I can clip my yarn. And you're just going to cut that working yarn right from, see, there's the ball. We're just going to cut that working yarn and continue to pull it right through that loop. And that ties it off. So there we are. Purling and stockinette and binding off all in one tutorial. Boy, oh boy. The one thing I will say about stockinette though, before you go making an enormous scarf or something, is that stockinette will curl on the end. You can see where it's already started to curl up. If it doesn't have a different sort of stitch pattern to hold it down, it will curl. No matter how much you iron it, push it down, wet it down, it's always going to curl up. So just something to keep in mind. Willie, can you move out of the way? This is Willie, the best dog in the world. Okay, go on. Go on. You're going to be in the blooper reel. Okay, so in today's tutorial, we learned a new stitch. We learned a purl. And we also learned that if you purl a row and then knit the next, and then purl the next, and knit the next, and if you just keep alternating those rows, you're going to get what's called the stockinette stitch. So I want to show you something that can happen with the stockinette stitch if you don't have another stitch on either end to anchor it, and that is curling. Now, this is a little hat that I was making for a baby. It's just kind of an experiment, really, but it really illustrates the curling effect of stockinette stitch. Now, in this instance, I wanted it to curl. I wanted the curl to be the brim of the hat. So if you want your work to curl, that's great. That's definitely going to work for you, because you can't get it to uncurl. No matter how much you unroll it, it's going to curl right back up. But there are some times when you don't want that curl. And an example of that is this scarf that I made when I first started knitting again. I found this beautiful yarn, and it had just a little bit of sparkle in it. And I'm a total sucker for bright colors and sparkles. And so I started knitting, and I was just happily cruising along, watching Netflix and just knitting and feeling so excited about myself. But I noticed after a little while that I was not getting a nice flat scarf. I was getting a tube. And if you look at the other side, you can see where it totally curled up. I wanted it to be a nice wide scarf, and I got a tube. So I did what you do. I went on YouTube to find out, how can I get it to stop curling? How can I fix this? And I went to Very Pink Knits, because she's amazing. And there's no hope for it, really. It just curls. You can't make it not curl. No matter how much blocking you do, it's not gonna happen. So I've learned to love my scarf as it is, and I do still wear it. It's kind of neat, actually. So I still wear that scarf. Now I have one other example I wanted to show you, where I used a combination of knit and purl stitches. And as you can see, this scarf lays nice and flat. It doesn't curl at all, because I did use a combination of knit and purl. Okay? So those are just some things to keep in mind when you're working with stockinette stitch. Like, I love stockinette stitch. It's so pretty. Like I said before, I love the uniformity of it. I love all those neat tidy rows, but it will curl. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I hope you're enjoying the tutorials as much as I'm enjoying making them. And I hope you have a great night, and keep practicing. And you know, the more you practice, the better you're going to get, and the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to want to learn. And pretty soon you'll be a yarnaholic, just like a lot of us. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.